If you're struggling to write formulas inside of your Airtable database, you're not going to want to miss this video. I'm going to be going into detail on the three most commonly misunderstood parts of the formula syntax. So if that's of interest, stick around and let's get into it. Hi, my name is Gareth Pronovost. I'm the owner at Gap Consulting, where we help businesses to get organized and automated, streamlining processes with an Airtable database and then automating them with Zapier or other automation tools. If that's of interest, definitely swing by our website and give us a subscribe here on YouTube so that you don't miss out on all the free content that we're putting out. But that being said, let's just jump into my screen here and we're going to take a really basic high-level example. Of course, the syntax rules that we're going to be talking about in terms of how they interact with formulas, it's not really important how complex those formulas are. The syntax is what it is, and that's what we're talking about here. So, as you see, we've got three different examples or three different data points or records, and we're collecting width and length. And so we're going to write some pretty simple formulas that are looking at area and then also outputting that area in a textual format, which I'll get into in a minute. But the important part here, again, it's all about syntax, right? So we need to really understand how Airtable is different from formulas that you might have written in Excel or Google Sheets, and then also understanding that syntax so that we can write the best formulas for our needs. All right, so number one, how is this different? Well, when you write a formula in Airtable, it is all about the referencing a field. Now, a field in Airtable, if you're new to the software, a field references the entire column. And so when you write a formula, it has to be to the entire field. So I cannot say here, let's suppose I wanted to calculate area, for example, and I choose a formula to do that. I cannot say, hey, I want to multiply 10.5 times 2.1, right? Because these are specific cells. And this is how we would write this formula if we were in a typical spreadsheet. We would say this times this, and then we would drag that formula down and we would say, okay, now this times this, and now this times this. That's not how Airtable works. When we write a formula in Airtable, it applies to the entire column or field all at once. So we need to write that formula as such. So let's go ahead and say width. And you see here that when I start typing width, and I'm just referencing the name of this field, it pops up here. And so I select that inside of there and I say times or multiplied by, which is the asterisk, shift 8, and then length, right? And so this is going to output an area for me. Now by default, the number is not going to show up in decimal format. And of course we would probably want it, since we are multiplying width and length that include decimals, we would probably want to have decimals on our answer as well. So we need to re-access this and go into the formatting here to get that decimal. Now we can vary the precision however we would like. Let's say I want to go to hundredths place. I hit save, and I've got a nice output here. Okay, so the big takeaway here is when I'm writing this formula, it has to reference the entire field. One other thing, and this is kind of like a little bonus here, you'll notice that I didn't have to start this formula with an equal sign. And this is another big difference between spreadsheets and databases, or at least Airtable. In Airtable syntax, we don't need to worry about setting up an equal sign. When we tell it that this is a formula field type, that's all it needs to know. And it's then looking to, what is that formula? Excel is very different. If we don't put that equal sign first, it doesn't know that, hey, this is going to be a formula that we want to, write in. And so that's just another little takeaway that kind of piggybacks on that first one. Okay, so quick recap. Number one is when you write a formula, it has to be for the entire column or field, right? All right, so that's part one. Part two is if I have a long name here with the space included, let's say with the furniture in this case. So if I have a space included in the name of my field, when I write that formula, you'll see that this was automatically changed. It originally just said width times length, nothing else. But this is a syntax rule. If I'm referencing a field that has a space in the name, in order to tell Airtable that the whole thing is the name of that field, it has to be wrapped in those squiggly brackets. So you'll see that Airtable did that automatically. Let me go ahead and do that again now for the length here. Let's say we had length of furniture here. And now when I look at the area output, it will also show that. So here, length of furniture is in squiggly brackets. Again, that's because I've got a space in the field name, or multiple spaces in this case. Now, if I'm writing this formula from scratch, I don't necessarily, let me go ahead and give this a new unique name. I'll put an asterisk here. I don't necessarily have to include those squiggly brackets when I'm writing this. I can start typing with, and it shows up here, and then I can just select it. And when I select it, it automatically puts it in there in the right syntax. But this is just one of those things that you might want to be aware of as you go on, as you move forward. When you're referencing a field, that is a column, you have to reference with the squiggly brackets around the name in the case where there's a space in there. Okay, that's tip number 2. And now for tip number 3, if we wanted to have a textual output, so I'm going to call this the area text. And let's say what I want to have is an output that says, in this case, 10.5 inches using the double quote by 2.1 inches. Well, we would write this with a concatenate formula. Let's go ahead and get started on what this looks like. So first I'll say width, comma, and then I'm going to include some quotes here. I'm going to say space, x, space, and then I'm going to have length here. Whoops. All right, let's go ahead and save this and just take a look at what we have thus far. So this formula that I just wrote, pretty simple and straightforward, is going to say 10.5 by 2.1, right? And instead of by, the little x, right? So if I want to come in and make sure that I include that double quote, which here in the US we use to show off inches, if I'm including that in here, I need to include that essentially inside of the textual space. And in order to use this concatenate formula, you'll notice that in order to get that text in there, I've used this quote, space, x, space, and then another quote. In this case, I use double quotations for both. The important tip here is that double quote or single quote will work in order to get this done. And that's important because for this, I need to actually output the text of double quote. In other cases, you might need to output text of single quote. And so in order to tell Airtable, hey, this is text that I need to include in this output, you need to have it wrapped in either a double or a single quote. So let's go ahead and imagine what the output that we want here is. First, I'm just going to do a text output. And I'm going to use a single line text. What I want to see is this, 10.5 double quote, space, x, space, 2.1 double quote, right? This is the output that I want to derive. And so it should be fairly straightforward. And the way to do that is to first come in here and put in that double quote. So again, I'm inside of my quotations, right? I have a starting quote and an end quote, and inside there, Airtable knows that this is going to be text that's included. But here's the thing, if I try to save this right now, this is going to read as the open quote, and then this is read as the closing quote, and then this third double quote is a broken formula. So if I save it, it's going to say that the syntax is wrong. There's something wrong with the way I wrote this formula, and that's what we would expect. So we need to actually wrap this in single quotes instead of double quotes. And let's take a look at what this output now has in store for us. So you'll see that now that I've used that single quote to tell it where the text is, I got that double quote here on my 10.5. And I'm going to go ahead and add another one here at the end. So single quote, double quote, single quote, and that will incorporate that double quote onto my second number as well. And so now this is matching what we wanted the output to look like, and it looks accurate for examples 2 and 3 as well. And so that's it. The third tip here is when you're looking to output some text, a single or a double quote can be used. You need to have an open and a close on those quotation marks, and you need to be consistent from one to the other. But it doesn't matter which one you pick, so long as you're consistent and able to get everything you need in there. As always, I hope you found that to be super helpful. If you did and you'd like to learn more, We have a lot of resources that we've put together on our site, so swing on by and see how we can help. We have a blog that includes free content every week. We also built an Airtable free crash course that'll get you up to speed in under 2 weeks. And if you're looking for something more advanced, you can book some time to have a discussion with me. I will hop on a Zoom call with you and we can talk about what your needs are and how our company might be able to help. So if that's of interest, swing on by. Look forward to connecting with you soon.